Chapter 8. Merribeth. Merribeth placed Lucas's bowl in the sink and sent him to his room to grab his shoes. It had been a nice weekend staying home with him, but Monday had come quickly, and though she wasn't sure she was ready to see Chance again, she needed to get back to work. Thankfully, Lucas had no trouble finding his shoes today, and half an hour later she had dropped him off and was clocking in. As she turned to her locker to put her purse and lunch inside, a note taped to the outside caught her attention. Tearing it off, she opened it up and read the short message. "Please come see me today when you get here. Chance." Oh no. Was he planning to fire her after all? Dock her pay? Maybe he'd found out she was a single mother and realized she was bound to have to take more days off in the future. Dread filled her as she placed her purse and lunch in the locker and shut the door. She might as well get the meeting over with. She knocked softly on his door jamb when she reached his office. His door, as he claimed it always would be, was open, and he looked up at her and smiled. "Merribeth, I'm glad to see you made it in today. How's your son?" He motioned for her to sit in one of the chairs across from him. "He's better, thank you. Unfortunately, he wasn't really sick, but I have to follow my daycare provider's rules. Thank you so much for the time off. I'd like to say it won't happen again, but I can't guarantee that." He held up his hand to interrupt her. "I told you not to worry about it. I know you, but I also looked into your work history, and you have missed very few days. Even the ones you have were verified sick days for either you or your son." Merribeth nodded, wondering where he was going with this. "Anyway, I have a special position I need filled, and I need someone I can count on. I interviewed a few people on Friday, but now I'd like to interview you. Can you spare a few minutes?" A special position? What on earth was he talking about? Was this his way of trying to apologize to her? If he thought he could waltz back into her life with his charming smile and some made-up title and she'd fall into his arms again, he had another think coming. She wasn't going to let him off the hook that easily. "I suppose, but can I ask what sort of position?" His lips pulled into a smile. "One I happen to think you'll be suited perfectly for." Heat flushed across Merribeth's cheeks, and her feisty nature reared its head. Was he trying to flatter her? He hadn't spoken to her in nearly a decade, so how on earth did he know what she was suited for? "I'm not sure how you would know that, since you haven't been around me in the past 8 years. "I need a personal assistant, Merribeth," he said, cutting her off. Her jaw dropped open. He wanted her to be his assistant? Had he lost his mind? "And you thought I would be a good candidate?" "I need someone with an attention to detail who can make sure I'm doing everything I'm supposed to, and who can catch anything that falls through the cracks. I reached out to your old boss, and he agreed you would be a perfect candidate." Now Merribeth was really unsure whether to be flattered or unnerved. "I don't mean to be rude, but I assume you understand that you aren't my favorite person?" Chance threw back his head and laughed. Merribeth wasn't sure whether he was going crazy or she was. "That's exactly why I want you. I know you won't suck up to me, and you won't be afraid to give it to me straight." Merribeth narrowed her gaze at him. Was he serious? Though it had been years since she had talked with him, he hadn't been the type to play games with people in the past. Surely he wouldn't do it now. "It sounds like an amazing opportunity, but what would the hours be? I'm afraid I need weekends off because my daycare isn't open on Saturday and Sunday." His smile stretched a little wider. "That's the best part. Your hours would stay the same, but the pay would be a little better." He grabbed a sheet from the notepad and wrote down a number. Then he folded it and slid it across the table to her. Merribeth picked up the paper and opened it. Her eyebrows lifted at the number he had written on the paper. Is this per month? It was nearly double what she was making now. He nodded. It is. And that's just for the first 90 days, to make sure it works out. After that, it's a 5% raise. Plus there's dental, medical, vision, and 2 weeks paid vacation after the 90 days. Merribeth's mouth dropped open. You do know I'm just a maid, right? His smile faded, and he shook his head. Nobody is just anything, and I'm sorry if I made you feel that way. Your present does not define your future. If you think you wouldn't like the job, that's one thing, but don't sell yourself short. I wouldn't be offering it if I didn't think you could handle it. Merribeth's mouth dried up. This couldn't be real. Her life didn't work out this way. It hadn't since the day he left her. She'd often told Holly that if it weren't for bad luck, she'd have no luck at all. So this had to be a dream. If she pinched herself, she would wake up, back in her little house, and realize this had all been a dream. One that would disintegrate and leave her feeling foolish as she accepted the offer. And are you offering it? I thought this was just an interview. He waved his hand. A formality. I knew the moment I saw you again that I wanted you. Needed you. So, he leaned back and folded his arms across his chest. What do you think? A million thoughts ran through her mind. Taking the job would be amazing, not only for her resume, but for her financial situation. But it would also put her in close proximity with Chance Overstreet every day. Could she work this close with him without developing feelings for him again? He'd broken her heart once, and she certainly had no desire to go through the experience a second time. Plus, this time there was Lucas to consider. She would not be able to lock herself in her room, eat ice cream, and listen to sad songs for hours on end if he broke her heart again. However, this offer was simply too good to pass up, and it might never come around again. I think you just found yourself a new personal assistant. Wonderful. I think we're going to make a great pair, Merribeth. As if he'd just realized the faux pas he'd made, he grimaced and tried again. I mean, as work associates, of course. Merribeth held up her hand to stop the embarrassing derailment. I get it. Let's just both try to forget the past and keep in mind that's all we are, work associates. She wasn't sure if that last statement was more for his sake or hers. Somehow, she thought forgetting the past might be the hardest part of this new position.